صديقكم يقول: ما حكم تصوير الميت ونشر الصور في
لا يجوز
المواقع؟
تصوير الميت ولا الحي، لا يجوز تصوير الميت ولا الحي، وقد لعن الله المصورين. وإذا كان هذا في حق الحي فهو في حق الميت أعظم. لا يجوز تصوير الميت ولا الحي، والميت نرى أنه لا يجوز تصويره لا بالفيديو ولا بالكاميرا الثابتة. نعم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Here in this audio we're going to look at the different fatwa of Shaykh bin Baz regarding the topic of tasweer, video taking or image making, and the topic as a whole, photography, because we see there's different verdicts, and also there's different reports from some of his students. Some report that he died in this state, and others report that which is contrast to that. So from academic research is that we investigate the opinion of a scholar, see the stages that they went through, the marahil. This is from amana ilmiya, academic honesty, that we ascribe the opinions accurately, and each may narrate based upon what reached them or what they came across. But as a whole, we just research the matter and look into it and see if there's a way to harmonize between these opinions. So we're going to first clarify that Shaykh bin Baz, rahmatullahi alayh, he was very staunch about the topic of picture taking as a whole. He even has a book called Hukm al-Tasweer, where he prohibits it. And also is an explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, the chapter Bab Majab al-Musawwirin. You can read some of his speech there and listen to the audio. And also, he's the one that gave the preface, the taqdeem, to Shaykh Hamoud al-Tuwajiri's book, I'lan al-Nakir. So we just want to quickly, as we already have taken the stances of some of the ulama and the actual view that they hold in a separate video. We went to lengths. We'll give the link to that. But I just wanted to highlight that even through the stages of Shaykh bin Baz, where he adopted certain views, there was a lot of restrictions. And during that passage of his time, there those fatwa about tasweer, there was a lot of restriction. We just want to relay them, and also the dates as we go, and then we're going to relay some of the others ones, inshallah. So the first that we want to mention is here's a fatwa from Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, where he is a post in the year 2012, where he says, وَقَدْ سُئِلَ الشَّيْخ بن باز rahimahullah in the year 1407 Hijri. So we're going to keep out these numbers just so we can stay accurate. 14 Hijri to the Gregorian year. It is roughly 1986, 1987. So he's saying he heard the following fatwa from Shaykh bin Baz. So this is from the stages that Shaykh bin Baz, from completely being stern about anyone appearing on the television screen. He's here, Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili mentions, فيما أذكر عن التصوير في التلفزيون وعن ظهور بعض المشايخ في التلفزيون وذلك في الجامع الكبير. فقال إنه تصوير محرم. So pay attention, this is Jami al-Kabir in Riyadh. إنه تصوير محرم, that he said there that it is haram, picture of the television appearing on your screen, on the screen of it. لكن من ظهر من المشايخ يرجو الخير ونشر الخير فأرجو أن يثيبه الله على نيته. وهذه الفتوى سمعتها من الشيخ. So, but whoever appears from the mashayikh on the television, hoping good and trying to propagate good, then I hope that Allah rewards him for his intention. He says, this verdict, I heard it myself directly from Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih. Then Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili mentions, لكن الذي أراه هو ما ذكرت. And he says, but however, what I see is what I mentioned. And if you go to that actual, what he says at the beginning, he says, إن التصوير المتحرك يختلف عن التصوير الثابت ويختلف عن التصوير الفوتوغرافي وهو عندي من المتشابهات ليس من الحلال البين وليس من الحرام البين ولمشايخنا فتاوى في إباحته وفتاوى في تحريمه. And he's saying, this is his answer, that the animated image of that which is in motion, the moving one, the video, is different from the one that is like photography. He sees it that is from the gray zone, the doubtful matters, that is not clearly halal and not clearly haram. So going back, he says, after stating Shaykh Muhammad's fatwa that he heard there, فإن كان لمصلحة فلا أرى فيه حرجا مطلقا. If there's a benefit for it, then I see no harm in that. وإن كان لغير مصلحة فمن استبرأ لدينه وعرضه فقد حصل خيرا كثيرا. And if it's not for, there's no benefit in it, then a person has him preserving and safeguarding his religion and his honor. By leaving it off, it's better and much good. So this is what he mentions, despite speaking afterwards that today's digital, he still sees the same ruling. Because مع ذلك أقول الذي ظهر لي أنها من المتشابهات. That video, despite it being digital, it is from the doubtful matters. إن ظهرت فيها مصلحة فلا حرج وإلا فالورع تركها والبعد عنها. There's a benefit, or else God consciousness and be on the safe side, it's better to leave it off and be distant from it. This is from Sharh of Kitab al-Tahara from Manhaj al-Salikin, the last lesson. So keep these dates. That is from the first of, after Shaykh Muhammad completely being stern upon anyone that appears, and to afterwards making excuse for some of the mashayikh and he himself not going on it. And that is roughly 1987, 1986. Here's another fatwa. It's on his website, baz.org. حكم تصوير المحاضرات بجهاز الفيديو. Recording the lectures through video recording to get the outreach of the benefit to far places. He says هذا محل نظر. This is on being looked into. And he says recording it with tapes, that's what's needed or intended or requested. ولا يحتاج معها إلى صورة. It's not needed to have an image. And then he says ولكن الصورة قد يحتاج إليها بعض الأحيان حتى يعرف ويتحقق أن المتكلم فلان فالصورة توضح المتكلم وقد يكون ذلك لأسباب أخرى فأنا عندي في هذا التوقف. So now this is one of the benefits of having the image. He's saying to identify the speaker, or for other means, he says, reasons. And then he says, I have some tawaqquf, I hold back because of what comes of hadith, he says. Then he says, وإن كان جماعة من إخواني أهل العلم رأوا أنه لا بأس بذلك لمصلحة العامة. For their broader benefit, the public's interest. Some of my fellow brothers from other scholars seen that there's no harm in that. They said, however, ولكن أنا عندي بعض التوقف في مثل هذا لعظم الخطر في التصوير. As for me, I'm holding back. So this is the next state where he's continuing from where Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili mentioned. It's found in Majmu' Fatawa, Maqala Shaykh bin Baz, Volume 5, page 355. There's also more to that, but just quickly. طيب, the next fatwa. So this is a famous video that went viral on YouTube some years ago. Was titled even like the retraction of Shaykh bin Baz from making video impermissible. Even some of them put that the title. But if you really listen carefully to see what he actually says, we're going to fast forward a bit to the main part.
إذا طلب التابعية أو حرم من الدراسة إلا بصورة للضرورات والحاجات التي تشبه الإكراه، فإذا كان لا يعطى تابعية حيض نفوس أو شهادة علمية إلا بصورة فهذا يعتبر من الإكراه أو من باب الضرورة. وقد كنت فيما مضى أعتقد أن عندي توقف فيما يتعلق بالصور في مثل هذا التلفاز.
And he's mentioned now, كنت فيما مضى, I was before holding back. Now, and this fatwa, if you go back to the date of it, it is in Jami' al-Kabir. Su'al, the number question 99, titled of Masail Mu'asira, Jami' al-Kabir in Riyadh. So the same place where Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili, there's some years a little bit apart from it. So we're going to, and even if those who can follow up more, you can even see with the quality of the video. And there's also different reference to that. So if anyone wants further information of where this video is from and the date of it. So this is the famous video that people share as Shaykh bin Baz recanting completely. But let's hear more, inshallah.
الصور في مثل هذا التلفاز الذي تنقل فيه صور المحاضرات والندوات، كنت أتحرج من ذلك ولا أرضى بوجود ذلك وقت إلقاء المحاضرة. ثم بدا لي أن أخذ ذلك للمصلحة العامة للمسلمين حتى يستفيدوا من الندوة أو المحاضرة التي تلقى في وسط التلفاز، أنها يعم نفعها أكثر، فإذا جاز التصوير للتابعية ونحوها وهي مصلحة فردية وحاجة فردية، فكيف بالحاجات التي يعم نفعها والمصالح التي يعم نفعها؟ هذا مما هو عندي عدم التشديد في منعه.
So pay attention to the wordings. Like he was saying that before he wasn't allowing that during the lectures, and then later on he began to see the greater benefit that if there's for the benefit for identification to have ID cards, this is a greater benefit for naf'ul muslimin, to benefit the Muslims, he says. So he said he stopped to be very stern of منع يعني التشديد في ذلك.
مما هو عندي عدم التشديد في منع تصوير الندوات والمحاضرات التي يعم نفعها للمسلمين فيما يلقى من طريق التلفاز ونحوه. هذا هو وجه عدم المنع في هذا وعدم التوقف عنه، وللمسألة مجال آخر من جهة المنع. لكن
as he's speaking, he says this topic has another time for it, another majal, another place for it, that to speak about it being prohibited, and like a follow-up, he's saying. So this is not a complete answer, but he's just kind of explaining some of his phases. But he's saying, right now, as of now, this is what I say. So he shows you it's still open as he speaks.
يتعلق مصلحة العامة أعظم وأكبر مما يتعلق المصلحة الفردية في تابعية ونحوها. نسأل الله للجميع التوفيق. نعم.
So once again, he repeats, because in some of his verdicts, he emphasizes the benefit for identification purposes, that to reach further people. This is what he sees, if that greater benefit, like in comparison to identification purposes for the ID of an individual. He says this is more greater benefit. But then after that, this is another stage of his statement, and you can see, pay attention to each wordings, and you can compare them. This is also on his website, binbaz.org.
يقول ما رأي الشيخ في قضية التصوير؟ فالسائل يقول ما رأي الشيخ لو كان يصور وهو لا يعلم؟
أصل التصوير محرم. هذا أصل التصوير. قال صلى الله عليه وسلم أشد الناس عذابا يوم المصورون. وقال عليه الصلاة والسلام أصحاب هذا الصور يعذبون يوم القيامة ويقال وحي ما خلقتم. التصوير لا يجوز لا للذكرى ولا لغير هذا من الشؤون.
So they're asking Shaykh Baz, and what's your opinion? And also, what if you were to be taken picture of while you do not know? So he mentions the origin is that it's not permissible. So he says, except for a durura. And then he says, as for a durura, he's going to give examples. He gives the example, license, ID cards.
وهكذا ما يصور بين الندوات والمحاضرات التي يرجى فيها مزيد العلم والخير والفضل هذا محل نظر.
He goes likewise, so he's given in the context of durura. He's going to repeat the word again, of conferences and seminars, because this is under mahallu nazarin, it's under still be looked at. Pay attention to his wordings.
ولا أعلم ما يمنع ذلك لقصد نفع المسلمين وإشاعة الخير بين المسلمين ونشر الدعوة هذا واقع لأجل المصلحة العامة. إذا جاز التابعية ورخص القيادة والشهادة الفردية الضرورية فالشيء الذي ينفع المجتمع وينفع المسلمين ويكون وسيلة إلى هداية الكثير من الناس وانتفاعهم هذا يكون أولى بالجواز لهذا الغرض النبيل العظيم. ولهذا أقررناه في الرابطة في مجالس الرابطة وفي مواضع كثيرة لهذه المصلحة العظمى.
So he explains the reason similar to the previous audio of the greater benefit, and he says this is something waqi' in reality shows, and he's mentioning why he in some of the conferences or the committee, the fiqh councils where he got together on, there's images of him. He's explained this is the reason for it. He said, although that he doesn't like picture taking, absolutely, he says, I don't like it. And he's against it, absolutely, except for durura, he says. He said, except for durura, and he said, likewise, the surveillance for criminals, those reasons.
يمسكوا إذا وجدوا وما أشبه ذلك من الحاجات.
So this is the exact wordings of some of what he mentions, and he's confining it in that with greater benefit for like da'wah. And he gave examples to his like the international fiqh councils or to something to reach far distance of Muslims. And he's saying he didn't close that door when he wasn't stern. So you can hear some of the wordings of Shaykh Muhammad. And even with that, he says it's still under another, it's still being looked at, some of his wordings. But I'm going to give you another stage right after that, inshallah, of Shaykh Muhammad. This is a fatwa, Nurun ala Darb. I believe it is number here stated 511. 511. You can go back to it, it's also available on YouTube. He explains his appearances on video, why he came on and why he decided. And you're going to hear it. So this is after those previous videos.
التلفاز وبالفيديو إذا دعت الحاجة إلى ذلك وقالوا غير ما ذكرنا وإلا فالأصل تحريم التصوير وتحريم استعمال الصور. كثير من إخواننا أهل العلم قالوا أنه لا مانع من التصوير في القيام بالأحاديث الدينية في التلفاز وبالفيديو إذا دعت الحاجة إلى ذلك.
So once again he mentions that it's not permissible, the origin, and he gives what he usually mentions, except for ضرورة. Then he says, كثير من إخواننا من أهل العلم, many of our fellow brothers from the people of knowledge said that لا مانع من التصوير. There's no prohibition from doing taswir, of using a hadith and religious on the television and video if there's a need for that. We're going to listen further, inshallah.
وقالوا إن هذا من باب ارتكاب أدنى السنتين لتفويت كبراهما.
So pay attention. He says that their justification is that it's lesser of two evils. Not that it's qurba, something nearness to Allah, something good in itself. They're saying it's a lesser of two evils. That's why we're doing it. This is what he mentions, with the justification. But continue on, the audio. And the difference is they're actually seeing that it's evil, but they're doing it because it's a lesser two evils. It's different from someone says it's actually something good, and this is what the Shaykh is mentioning, their statements.
نصائح العلماء وأحاديث العلماء يجعل ذلك فرصة لغيرهم مما يتكلم في هذه الأمور ويدعو إلى الباطل ويستنكر عن الحق، وهذا اللي قالوه له وجه غد.
Yeah, so here he mentions what they said has a good point, a valid point. له وجه.
لنصيحة المسلمين والإجابة على أسئلتهم، وهكذا في تصوير الفيديو في الندوات العلمية أو المحاضرات العلمية. اللي يرى الناس الشخص الذي ألقى المحاضرة والأشخاص الذين قاموا بالندوة ليطمئنوا على أنهم فلان وفلان.
Also from the reasons to assure that this is so-and-so actually speaking by seeing his actual image on the screen.
ويتيقنوا أن هذه الندوة صدرت منهم، لأن بعض الناس قد يشك في صدورها إذا نشرت وقد لا يسمع أصواتهم وقد يسمعها وتشتبه عليه هذا القول له وجه بهذا الشرط وهو شرط أن يكون ذلك لمصلحة المسلمين.
And he said, from this angle, it has a valid point. And he says, with this condition, that it's for the benefits of the Muslims, بهذا الشرط وشرط أن يكون ذلك بمصلحة المسلمين ونشر العلم, he says, وحفظ الأمن. You're going to hear those words?
ونشر العلم وحفظ الأمن وغير هذا مما يكون في مصلحة عامة للمسلمين هذا قوله وجه. وأنا لم أفعل ذلك إلا في أوقات تعم البلوى بها في بعض.
And then he mentions about himself now. So afterwards, we hear this now, an explanation of his previous, him appearing in some of the videos. So this is after. And he mentions his reason. That his actual wordings, وأنا لم أفعل ذلك إلا في أوقات تعم البلوى بها في بعض المجالس العامة التي يكون فيها ندوات ومحاضرات عامة. He said, I didn't do so except in scenarios where it was overwhelming. In some of the gatherings, the public gatherings, that there's nadawat. This is wording that he always repeats in all those audios. Like it's a conference or lectures of general lectures he's going to mention. So he's seen it was overwhelming, so he did it for the greater benefit.
التي يكون فيها ندوات ومحاضرات عامة فقد تصور وأنا من جملة الحاضرين فلا أشد في ذلك.
Pay attention. He says they were recording and I was from جملة الحاضرين. I was from the people that were there. So فلا أشدد في ذلك. نظرا لمصلحة العامة. I'm not going to be stern about it. Look at the greater benefits. It's recording and he was there, they've been called. Like that. Looking at, he's not going to stop the whole conference. He's going to go ahead with it for the greater benefit of the Muslims. So now people can see further what Shaykh Baz is saying.
نظرا للمصلحة العامة التي قد ينفع الله بها المسلمين. أما أن نصور وأنا وحدي لحديث في التلفاز أو في غيره.
He says, as for me, that I'd be recorded while I'm alone, just on the television.
المقدم عليه لأن عندي تحرجا من ذلك وعندي توقعا في ذلك.
And then he says, or me traveling. He says, then I didn't do so that. He says, عندي تحرج من ذلك. I feel uncomfortable about that. And I hold back. So this is, as they're saying, this is the last stage. Those who are reporting, he's saying this wouldn't be like his day then or his thing. These are just like overwhelming situations for the greater benefit. Sometimes these big gatherings with world leaders, committees, or a big lecture where they're inviting you and there's recording. So this is what he mentioned. But as for him doing this on his own or when traveling, or if there's no overwhelming need, and he's in front of the screen, he said no, he's not comfortable for that.
لأن عندي تحرجا من ذلك وعندي توقعا في ذلك عندي بعض التوقف في ذلك وأما إخواني الذين أقدموا وقالوا بأن يصوروا لي هذا المعنى الذي يتقدم فأرجو أن يكونوا موفقين وأنهم معذورون لقصدهم الطيب وحرصهم على نفع المسلمين والله ولي التوفيق.
So he mentions, as for my fellow brothers, that maybe on their own or separately they do that or they initiate that and they're pleased with that. He said, I hope that they're excused and they're granted success. And Allah is the source of the success and prosperity, provider of that. And to add, explain why Shaykh bin Baz is not comfortable, even for da'wah, you can hear some of his wordings.
كل مصور اللهم صل على وسلم وهذا تظهر الصورة كاملة أمام الناس.
لكن أحسن الله إليك من باب تعليم الدين هنا في التلفاز يظهر الصورة من باب علم الناس.
يعلم مثل ما علم النبي الأمة، الرسل علموا الأمة بدون التصوير، الصحابة علموا الأمة بدون التصوير. اللهم صل اللي في الأولين في الآخرين.
So they ask him about teaching purposes on the television. So he says, he teaches as the Prophet taught the Ummah, without image making. Sahaba taught the Ummah without. He said, whatever is sufficient for the first generation will be sufficient for the latter generations. So this is more about recording, because Shaykh bin Baz, if you go back to his fatwa, binbaz.org, he sees that live broadcast without any recording is allowed. Some of the shuyukh, they see that live broadcast. We're not talking about live broadcast, we're talking about recording. This is where Shaykh bin Baz is holding back much from. طيب, we're going to share now, as there's different reports about Shaykh bin Baz. Being that said, we know that what his speech was in the stages, and even with him appearing in some and being okay with it, with a greater benefit, and later on still feeling a bit hesitant about that, and then still saying that he wouldn't just do that himself while he's alone. This is to show a lot of restrictions. It's not like looseness that people are saying, but we're going to hear certain clips now here of Shaykh Salih Fawzan.
يقول فضيلة الشيخ وفقكم الله: ما حكم التصوير بكاميرا الفيديو؟ وبماذا نرد على أنكم قد أبحتم ذلك بخروجكم بالتلفاز وبقناة المجد؟
سبحان الله، أنا أبحت هذا. أما الخروج أنا ما خرجت، لكن هم جاءوا حضروا في المسجد، صوروا المحاضرة والحاضرين، هم اللي فعلوا هذا بدون استئذان وبدون مشورة. أنا ما أبحت هذا ولا رضيت به حتى. نعم.
So same thing, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, a video recording and the masjid and so forth, the cameras bringing them. He's saying they came, and this is how a lot of these scholars are. Then it's something that it's overwhelming. People are going to come with their cameras, the videos, the setup. It's not like he's initiating. This is something that people are doing, and it's sometimes, like Shaykh Abdul Khudair mentions, there's like haraj, is a bit overwhelming to say no to every, especially when you're a big figure and you're requested to give talks. So this is how it is. So he's saying, I don't see it's permissible. But what he sees, Shaykh Fawzan, is live broadcast. We'll mention that another session, but we'll continue on the audio.
يقول فضيلة الشيخ: هل يصح أن يقال إن البوصيري
هذا هم يصورون ابن باز الله يغفره، وهو ما يرضى بهذا ويحذر منه. يجون في الحفلات وفي المجالس ويأخذون صورته وتظهر بالتلفزيون. هل هذا معنى أن الشيخ ابن باز أباح التصوير؟ حاشا وكلا. ماته يقول التصوير بجميع أنواعه حرام.
So same thing. They did the same thing to Shaykh bin Baz, and he wasn't really okay with it. And he died saying that all of types of picture taking to all of his means is haram. That's what Shaykh Salih Fawzan mentions. Here also Shaykh Abdul Aziz Rajihi was asked: يتردد في أوساط الناس أن سماحة الشيخ عبد العزيز بن باز رحمه الله كان يفتي بجواز تصوير الفيديو. That's what's being spread amongst the people, that Shaykh bin Baz used to see it to be permissible تصوير الفيديو, video recording or picture taking through that means. وبما أنكم حفظكم الله كنتم من الملازمين لسماحتي العارفين بأقوالي نرجو من فضيلتكم أو نرجو من فضيلتكم بيان هذا الأمر بيانا شافيا. أما بعد فإني لا أعلم أن سماحة الشيخ عبد العزيز بن باز يفتي بجواز التصوير بالفيديو. So he responds by saying, because he thought you are someone that used to be near to him, close to him. He said, I don't know if Shaykh bin Baz giving fatwa that's permissible video. says إنما الذي يعلم أنه يفتي بمنع التصوير مطلقا إلا للضرورة. Says that video or taswir absolutely is haram except for ضرورة. And it gives like examples of ID purposes, license, shahada ilmiya. It was found on Shaykh al-Raji's website. Also it was found in a book called الإبراز لأقوال العلماء في حكم التلفاز وبروز على التلفاز. طيب. And we also asked Shaykh al-Raji, try to play it.
السؤال الذي بعده ما هو موقف سماحة الشيخ عبد العزيز بن باز في تصوير الفيديو يا شيخ أحسن الله إليك؟
ايش؟
موقف سماحة الوالد شيخ بن باز في تصوير الفيديو.
So here I'm asking what's the stance of Shaykh bin Baz regarding videotaping.
تصوير هو موجود في فتاوي الجواب على هذا يراجع الفتاوى هو قال ما يرغب التصوير هو موجود في فتاوى سماحة الشيخ يرجع إليه هو موجود في الجواب السؤال.
So he mentions that is found in his fatawa collection, and what he doesn't see the videotaping to be permissible. You can go back to his fatawa collection. Also, here's an audio when Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih was still alive. They brought up to Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih after Shaykh bin Baz passed away that Shaykh bin Baz was against videotaping and that type of taswir. So they're mentioning this against him. Here are his words.
حفظكم الله. الآن الناس توسعوا بارك الله فيك يا شيخ في مسألة التصوير في الفيديو.
اي نعم.
وحتى صوروا النساء والبنات اللاتي قريبات من البلوغ. وهذا يباح حتى في التسجيلات يا شيخ حفظكم الله.
عجيب.
يعني بنات فوق ال10 سنوات.
So here they're telling Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih people went extreme with videotaping. They even have women that are close to the age of puberty or a little bit around that. And this is in the tasjilat, these are in the recordings. So Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih says, Ajib Allah, this is something strange by Allah.
ينشد الأناشيد وبحجة أن هذا التصوير جائز. ويوجد الآن بارك الله فيك يا شيخ في التسجيلات الإسلامية صور لبعض المشايخ الذين توفوا مثل الشيخ بن باز.
So now they're telling him that some of the mashayikh that passed away, like Shaykh bin Baz. So Shaykh bin Baz already passed away. During this time they're asking Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih. So it was known, his opinion, his stance. They're saying like he died upon this. We're going to hear what he says.
في التصوير في الفيديو وقد سمعنا أن الشيخ بن باز رحمه الله أنه منع التصوير وقال لا أسمح لأحد أن يصوره.
And so here he's saying we heard from Shaykh bin Baz. The question is saying that he prohibited taswir and he said I don't permit anyone. And the audio is available. Whether it was general, the Shaykh, we're going to see some of the statements of other students.
فما رأيكم شيخ لأن إذا ناقشنا بعض الإخوان في هذه المسألة.
So this is what they're bringing up. It's found this audio. لقاء باب المفتوح 219b. You can find it there. Also here's another, which is going to be more reports of other of his students, what they said.
وهذا يسأل بعض الإخوة عن محاضرة قد صورتها الجامعة فيستأذنونك على أو في نشرها.
So here they're asking Shaykh Muhammad bin Hadi about a lecture he gave, and it was recorded or a picture of it. So they're asking about distributing it.
والله أنا أقول إن استطعتم أن تنشروها بدون صورة فانشروها واعلموا أنني لست.
So he said, if you're able to distribute that lecture without an image, then do so. That's what he says.
الحجة ولا من هو أكبر مني إنما الحجة في كلام الله ورسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والتصوير حرام لا يجوز وقد يقع الإنسان في بعض الضرورات التي تسوغ له والحكم يبقى واحدا.
So he's saying that sometimes a person may fall into some overwhelming necessities or scenarios, but the ruling is still the same. So he's going to keep on mentioning. We're going to bring up Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih.
وأشهد بالله وقد قلت ذلك مرارا لسمعت هذا بأذني من شيخنا وسماحة والدنا إمام هذا العصر إمام أهل السنة فيه الشيخ عبد العزيز رحمه الله إذ قيل له مثل هذا القول فقال ما هو أنا الحجة في كلام الله ورسوله.
So he was mentioned to Shaykh Muhammad, we see on some of the images. He said, I'm not the Hujjah. The Hujjah is in the speech of Allah. It's a good statement. So when you find someone say that, but Shaykh Muhammad was appearing, or Shaykh Muhammad allowed, or Shaykh Muhammad seen the benefit, that's not enough for us to go from something that we know of clarity, and then just to take the ijtihad of a scholar. A scholar could be rewarded for his ijtihad, but for a person to just use that alone, it's not enough.
الله ورسوله نحن ندخل في بعض المناسبات يعني عند المسؤولين فيحصل هذا التصوير الشيخ ما يدري وأحيانا ما يكون له فيه رد الحجة في كلام الله ورسوله.
So sometimes the Shaykh Muhammad will enter in certain occasions with some of the figures, the people of positions, and also sometimes the Shaykh may not have no response. So he says the Hujjah is in the book of Allah and the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
والجواب المفيد في تحريم التصوير تعرفونه له رحمه الله.
He says the beneficial answer is you know his stance of his position of the verdict that is prohibited. Tasweer. طيب, here is Shaykh Zayd Madkhali. It's a question we translate in Toronto Da'wah, available, but he will read the Arabic about tasweer al-jawal, according to, or taking picture through the phone. And then he mentions that not permissible except for haja or durura. He says it's وعلى هذا مشى الشيخ بن باز يرى بأن التحريم عام بأي وسيلة من الوسائل. So this is what Shaykh Baz was upon, that it's haram, the prohibition is general with any means. And then he says كان التصوير بأي وسائل كان التصوير مع أن بعض العلماء المعاصرين فرق بين اشتقاق الصورة وبين نحتها والأحاديث تبقى على عمومها حتى يأتي ما يخصص من النصوص ولا مخصص. So he says الذي يصور بأي وسيلة وسائل بدون ضرورة تلجأه إلى ذلك فقد وقع في المحظور. And he says فعليه أن يرحم نفسه فالوعيد شديد. Subhanahu have mercy on him, show some pity, severe threats. So this is Shaykh Zayd Madkhali once again quoting. If there was any change, he would have mentioned this. These are shuyukh, and there's others. طيب, here's another الدر الأثمين في ترجمة فقيه الأمة العلامة بن العثيمين. The author Isam ibn Abdul Mun'im al-Murri, he mentions how the stages of al-Uthaymeen went with his last stance. And then he said قد نوقش الشيخ كثيرا في هذا الأمر في أن عموم الأدلة تدل على منع كل أنواع الصور إلا ما استثنته الضرورة. That the Shaykh was debating, we know the tapes and speeches. A lot of students went back and forth with him. That's why we find there's changes in some of the quyud and there's updates to his fatwa, al-Uthaymeen. And then he sees that the end was not permissible. And he has a stance even in the Jamia when there was video cameras. Tasweer al-video, he mentions that he came and he prevented it. Last incident, he pushes in his biography. And then he said, كما علي فتوى شيخنا العلامة بن باز رحمه الله الجميع وغفر لهم. He said, this is the way of the Shaykh of our Shaykh bin Baz. So he's also quoting. And there's others. You have other reports. And for this reason, when you look at the other fatwa of Shaykh bin Baz, like 2 years before his death, and As'ila of Hajj, 1418, 2 years before his death, he says, Shaykh bin Baz, still on his website, التصوير لا يجوز لا باليد ولا بالغير اليد. التصوير كله منكر. Tasweer is not permissible, not with the hand or without the hand. All of it is evil. 2 years before he died. And we shared other of his other fatwa that was closer to that time as well, and is found in Majmu' Fatawa Maqalat Shaykh bin Baz. Most of these fatwa that are mu'arrakha sana 1400 و18 that year, about 2 years before he died, are indicating more that he's stating that's impermissible. That's why you find a lot of his fatwa at that time, and you can do your research yourself. You can see it indicates that. And Shaykh bin Baz is the same person who critiqued al-Uthaymeen about his view in the matter. He has a fatwa. Even the audio is available. It's on his website, Mawqa Shaykh bin Baz. We'll read here the transcript. وَبَعْضُ النَّاسِ تَأَوَّلًا آخر وقالوا إن هذا ما صور إنما هو يحبس الصورة مثل صورة في المرآة يحبسها فهو ما صور إنما أمسك خلق الله بهذه الكاميرا وقالوا ما صور وهذا فيما يظهر لي تأويل لا وجه له فالتصوير محرم سواء بالكاميرا أو بغير الكاميرا فلا يليق فعل ذلك أبدا. So he's indirectly speaking about those who say it's the camera, the device is what took picture, it's not you. And those who made a different distinction between the hand and the device by pressing a zir, a button. طيب, also, just to add, during that time that bin Baz was somewhat okay with it for the greater benefit and those circumstances that we mentioned, he didn't see it loosely. Like we're going to read here, he says, أما التوسط في هذا في الدروس. Let's read here. Let's play the audio.
أما التوسع بهذا في الدروس أو بالتلفاز أو بغيره ما أعلم الأولين يوجب الإله لأنه توسع بهذا من دون الرجاء.
يعني here he says أما التوسع في هذا في الدروس أو في التلفاز أو في غيره ما أعلم له وجها يوجب الإباحة لأنهم توسعوا في هذا من دون عذر شرعي. Once again, Allah he mentions that was like for overwhelming lectures and words to be sent, like just your classes, or just like you individually just coming on the screen, and there's no real overwhelming need. This is what he was against at that time. So it's different from what a lot of people, when they hear this and they misunderstand of one sheikh reporting the stance of Shaykh bin Baz, and then they use it and they try to justify, say, no, Shaykh bin Baz, Allah Alam, if he was alive and heard about what you're doing, this is, well, from what we know, it'd never be okay with what you're doing. This looseness, this type of tawassu'. And also, there was a clip that we've seen a lot of people sharing for Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili. Some of them were sharing as if it was in their favor, like some people. And firstly, Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, he is extremely against photography. He's against it from when he was young. And here I'll read his exact statements just to show. He says, هذه المسألة منذ أن كنت طالبا في الثانوية وأنا أبحثها وبحثتها وما بحثت إلا ازددت يقين أن صور الفوتوغرافي محرمة إلا ما استثنى منها أو ما استثنى منها كالهوية والجواز وما يحتاج إليه. Once he was even like young, when he was still in his secondary, he was researching it. He came to realize that photography is haram. And he even mentions that, here will play his statement, his speech.
لا يمكن يطير البعير ولا يمكن أن يبحث طالب العلم مسألة التصوير الفوتوغرافي بحثا متجردا علميا دقيقا ويصل إلى الجواز. أنا أجزم بهذا.
He said there's no way that a student of knowledge, without any influence of desires or whims or anything, that research it, photography, and comes out that is permissible. He says, I'm certain about that. So he sees still images, a person just posting his image or just posing on the camera with people. His stance, as we're going to speak about, is video, and even that, he sees that min al-mutashabihat, from the doubtful matters. And it's only for some things that he mentioned as overwhelming benefit, like such as da'wah, he sees, that are extremely beneficial. But what the people are doing, and then they're saying, that's not correct. Some people, you just find them, they just push all these fatwa, and you don't take you just take what is of the same speech of the Shaykh that is probably in your favor, but the other points that he mentions, like for example, this photography that you have, and we're going to speak about, is there actual difference between photography and video taking? It's very problematic. Like Shaykh Albani, he said about this incident. Play his audio.
يكون الفرق بين التصوير الفوتوغرافي والتصوير التلفزيوني؟ لا فرق إلا عند أذناب الظاهريين.
So they asked Shaykh they asked Shaykh Albani, what's the difference between photography and video that's on the screen of the television? Shaykh Albani said there's no difference, except to the tales of the literalists. There's a difference, but in reality there's no difference. Everyone knows that photography is what really actually makes video, and in that which is consistent of, back in the days was a number of frames, now it's a consistent of images, motion images, of those still images that have to be brought together. And a person, one of our brothers once asked a question, if a video is paused, doesn't it become a still image, therefore photography? What's the ruling here? And he says, since a video is made up of thousands of still images shown in one after another, how is it essentially different from photography? If photography is prohibited because it serves images or closely resembles reality, why is video, which preserves even more detail, movement, and sound, not considered even more problematic? If videography is allowed, on what basis is a distinction made between living and non-living beings, as mentioned in some of the clips? And does the same logic apply to recordings of living people after they pass away? Also, if videography is allowed because it involves motion or continuity, how should AI-generated images or deep-fake videos be classified, especially when no real person is recorded, yet the result may look even more realistic? If a clear still image taken from a video is considered impermissible, how can the original video itself remain permissible? If the ruling changes based on form rather than outcome, what consistent principle clearly separates permitted for videography from prohibited photography or photography? And so these are questions that people ask. Even the people that design these devices, they'll tell you that it's still image making, both in reality. But even that, Shaykh Sulaiman Ruhaili sees that it's not clearly halal and not clearly haram. It's a doubtful matter. It's a gray zone. And a person, if he hears this and it's a gray zone, he should be on the safer side. Leave off. Because in reality, the people that say the greater benefit, in reality, it's not a great benefit. Like if you do so much clips of Shaykh Muhammad complaining about people going with images to extreme and videos to extreme, everything now. So when that door was open, a lot of people went to extreme. So close that door is better. That's the greater benefit.
فتدخل نفسك في احتمال أن تدخل في لعنة الله. فكيف إذا كان الظاهر رجحان التحريم؟ لا شك أن الأمر أعظم، ولذلك وصيتي لنفسي وإخواني أن نجتنب هذا الأمر. وللأسف يا إخوة كان الناس من طلاب العلم يجتنبون التصوير حتى جاءتنا هذه الجوالات.
So here he mentions an old clip, like if there was like a small percentage that it's haram, it's enough for you to keep this thing. He said back in the days, people, طلاب العلم, the students now used to avoid tasweer until these phones, these smartphones came, and then everyone started to use them and take pictures with them.
وكثرت في أيدي الناس فأصبح من كان منا يجتنب التصوير يتساهل اليوم بالتصوير. فنسأل الله أن يحيي قلوبنا وأن يكفينا شر أنفسنا، والسلامة لا يعدلها شيء، والدنيا كلها قليل، والباقي منها قليل، والذي لنا من الباقي قليل.
This is all his powerful advice just about picture taking and using these devices for these phones and these people, what they use. And bear in mind that these first opinions, the first to adopt these opinions about video or photography being allowed, were not Ahlul Sunnah. And even Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih, the first from Ahlul Sunnah to adopt that opinion, he himself stated that he, at that earlier time, he used to have good thoughts of Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq. He got it from Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq's book. And we'll clarify that here.
قضية مثلا التصوير كانت يا اخوان يعني كارثة تصل بلا مبالغة لحد الكفر، تكفير. زين؟ وكانت مشكلة حقيقة وتطرح لها المجالس. قام الشيخ عبد الرحمن ألف كتاب في أحكام التصوير، وأنا أشهد أن الشيخ العثيمين سمعت منها عدة مرات أنه كان يقول أفضل ما كتب في هذا الباب كتاب الشيخ عبد الرحمن بن خالد، وكان يحيلنا إليه. والله يقول يا أخوان اللي بيقرأ في التصوير يقرأ كلام الشيخ عبد الرحمن، وأنا يقول الشيخ نفسه وأنا أرى كما يرى الشيخ. يقول الذي أصلا خلاني أقتنع بهذا الرأي هو الشيخ عبد الرحمن عبد الخالق.
So here, one of the students is quoting that Shaykh Muhammad bin Saalih al-Uthaymeen was saying that he was convinced the reason why he adopted his opinion is because of the book of Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq, one of the biggest sururis, one of the biggest people that brought so much new opinions to us. At that time, some scholars have good thoughts of some of his research and some of his books, and things weren't really clarified. But this is how some of these views were adopted from these people, of their new books and what they had and they were bringing. Even Yusuf Qaradawi is from the first who came up with that opinion, and Fawzan responded to him at that time. So just to clarify, who's the first to have these opinions? And this is something to remember. The first to bring in these opinions that photography was allowed, video was allowed, were these people. Then some of the Mashayikh wa Sunnah start permitting it. Then it gradually. And if you look at some of the old tapes, the audios of Shaykh Sulaiman al-Ruhaili, it was just more audio. He was not on video until years after it came. Then he started to appear. Video was available for so long. So you can see that even some of the Mashayikh, by the passing of time, this is perhaps their ijtihad, but we don't just change by the evolving of a scholar or changing. We look into the matter as well, students. we don't blind follow anyone. What's more apparent and stronger is to be on the safe side. And that's why we see that a lot of these mashayikh, some of them have permitted it, some of them have recanted, and we clarified that, and we share the links at the bottom. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us and to make us of those who hear speech and follow the best of it. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
سئل الشيخ صالح الفوزان حفظه الله، ومعنى السؤال أن الشيخ بن باز رحمه الله يرى تحريم الصور، وأن فضيلتكم يرى تحريم الصور، ولكن نرى لكم صور. فقال الشيخ بن باز، ومعنى كلامه هو صور ما تصور، صور ما تصور، كان حاضرا في مجلس يصور فيه فصور، ما أذن ولا أمر. وقد يتأول الشيخ ويرى أن هذه من المسائل المستثناة، أنه قد يترتب على هذا مفسدة أعظم من مفسدة التصوير، فيعني يتأول في هذا الأمر، وقد يخالفه غيره.